Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and today we're going to recap joint practices between the San Francisco 49ers and the Denver Broncos. Going to dive into some offensive struggles, including that from quarterback Brock Purdy. Had kind of a roller coaster day. Going to get into some standout rookies, including Jordan Watkins and Alfred. Dive into some standouts from the rest of practice, and maybe discuss why the offensive output that wasn't that good may not be that bad for the San Francisco 49ers. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave us that 5-star audio podcast review. We have a jam-packed show ahead of us, so stay tuned, grab a drink, grab some popcorn, lock in for Niners and Broncos joint practice takeaways right here on 49ers Access. And as always, we have to start things off with what happened before practice began, because the San Francisco 49ers continue to make roster moves daily, cutting players, releasing players, and today was the same for them. They signed Mykel If that name sounds familiar, because he was in San Francisco just 2 years ago as a depth defensive lineman. He's back with San Francisco now. And they released cornerback Eli Apple to make room for him. San Francisco walked into today with just 6 healthy interior defensive linemen. Not what you want to see walking into your first preseason game, and certainly not what you want to see in a jam-packed joint practice session. So needed to add some bodies there, and did so with Mykel now back with the San Francisco 49ers. We also got some updates on Brandon Aiyuk and Jauan Jennings recoveries from John Lynch via KNBR earlier today. In regards to Brandon Aiyuk, there wasn't much of a difference. However, it did sound like John Lynch was leaning more towards ruling him out for week number 1, which shouldn't be a surprise. However, he did refrain from doing so. So maybe there's hope, but that hope feels like it's like a 0.25% chance he's back by week 1 again. I'm still eyeing week 10 against the Rams, hoping for sooner, but that feels like the date he shall return. The other big one, though, that being the return of Jauan Jennings. He's missed the last 4 to 5 practices, the entirety of this past week of practice because of a calf injury. A lot of assumptions are being made that it's because of the contract stuff. I do not firmly believe that is the reasoning behind Jennings holding out, if you want to put it that way. I think this is a serious injury. I think it's a real injury. And when you hear John Lynch say there's no timetable for return, now, if you're in the camp believing that it is a contract-related holdout, that could simply mean John saying that, well, we are not close to a deal with him, so you may not see him for a while. However, knowing Jennings got hurt in OTAs, came back fully healthy, practiced for a week or so, then got hurt again, that's indication that this is an ongoing issue for me, at least. I think Jennings is going through a calf problem. They don't want things to linger. And I think that although there may be a mixture of contract stuff and injury stuff involved in this, I do think that hearing there's no timetable for the return of Jauan Jennings, that to me raises some red flags. I obviously talked a lot about, Jennings' injury being serious and whatnot, and being more concerned than most are about it. And I will continue to kind of push that narrative, as I am a little more concerned than the consensus is on Jauan Jennings' calf injury going forward. John Neville's in the YouTube chat asked me a question. What up, Sterling? What's up, John? Hope you're having a great Thursday evening. He says, what type of play call style should we expect from Kubiak, that being Clay Kubiak, who will probably call plays for the entirety of the preseason? We've seen Shanahan step back in preseason games and give him more of the overview head coaching style compared to the play call style. I think we'll see a more vertical style offense. We saw that in the preseason last year. You saw a more kind of go for it on 4th down stuff. It's the same offensive system, mind you, so you'll see some of the same plays and whatnot, but I think you'll see a more aggressive passing offense, and an offense that will go forward on 4th downs. I think last year against the Saints, Joshua Dobbs went forward on 4th down against the Saints at the goal line, scored a touchdown. I think walked into halftime with the lead because of that, if I am remembering correctly. But I think we'll see an aggressive play style where Kyle is more conservative in preseason games, check downs, end arounds, nothing too crazy downfield. He may take 1 or 2 shots early, but I think you'll see Kubiak kind of ramp things up in regards to aggression in the next 3 preseason games. He should be calling plays for. Let's dive back into my notes because the attendance for today had a lot of Niners players off the list. Injuries are consuming this roster. Now, many of them are, depth guys, third or fourth receivers, but they are starting to pile up in a big way. Isaac Guerendo not practicing still. Bernardo Green not practicing. Evan Anderson still not practicing. Jacob Cowing, Andre Dillard, Jair Brown, Sam Aquanu, Fabian Moreau, Chaz Surratt, all those guys not practicing today. Jordan Elliott, defensive tackle, who may be in line for a starting job this season. He is going to miss the rest of this week, so that means the preseason game on Saturday. They'll have an off day on Sunday, maybe even an off day on Monday, not sure yet, but he will return next week at some time. He has a back injury. Jordan James, who just came back from a knee injury, apparently he broke his finger, not sure which one. He's going to be out a few weeks, so we were all hyping him up, saying this is a good chance for him to make a run for the RB2 job with Guerendo on the shelf. Well, now they're playing musical chairs again behind Christian McCaffrey, where Guerendo's out for a handful of weeks, and so is Jordan James. So funny enough, that room where we're all concerned about McCaffrey has become very, very thin behind him, meaning Patrick Taylor Jr. and Corey Kiner are now the second string and third string running backs with Amir Abdullah mixed in there too. So not the greatest news in regards to running backs, albeit Christian McCaffrey is still healthy, but no Jordan James and no Isaac Guerendo at today's practice, and probably for the next 2 preseason games on top of that. So not great for San Francisco. Darrell Luter Jr. and Marquise Siegel both left practice early today. They were also both cleared of concussions, so more of a precautionary removal from practice. But again, you're seeing so many guys go down with the injuries. You never want to see that. However, we did get 2 guys back, that being Nick Bosa and Kyle Juszczyk. So some good news. However, a lot of injuries piling up. And unfortunately, it's not the stars, right? It's not, yes, Aiyuk's already hurt. Yes, Mustafa's already hurt. Those are preseason injuries, right? But it's not Pearsall. It's not Purdy. It's not McCaffrey, Kittle, and those guys, thank God. But it's all the depth behind those guys. And it makes it worse knowing that the guys I listed, Pearsall, Christian McCaffrey, those guys do have injury history of their own. So it does make you walk in a little bit of, I guess, kind of on eggshells of like, how is this year going to go? And hoping that they're getting these things out of the way early to be healthy for the next 20-ish weeks or so, barring a playoff run for the 49ers. I will get to a lot of the YouTube comments soon, so stay there. I will get to you, I promise. I did want to mention that Dre Greenlaw, now with the Denver Broncos, did not practice today and will miss tomorrow's preseason game. So it was nice to welcome back DJ Jones and Talanoa Hufanga and Mike McGlinchey and Dre Greenlaw. However, Greenlaw did not practice today, which didn't seem to affect Denver's defense at all, but we'll get into more of that later. But DJ Jones, Hufanga, and McGlinchey all did practice. Ex-Niners were on the field today for the Denver Broncos. Kind of already talked about Brandon Aiyuk, but he continues to be a factor in regards to helping and coaching the wide receivers. He was out there during drills today, advising guys, talking to Pearsall and guys. So Aiyuk still hurt, but also still being a part of the team, which is good to see still as we get into kind of the ramp up into the preseason week 1 against the Broncos on Saturday, which I cannot wait to watch this weekend. Then we also got some updated return men. The list went from like 12 to 3 in a matter of a day or so. So I think we know who will be back there on Saturday against the Broncos. Junior Burgeon, which makes sense, Jordan Watkins, and Amir Abdullah. Those 3 guys were the primary punt returners today. So if you are in the camp wanting to know who will be returning kicks and punts this year for San Francisco, Junior Burgeon, Jordan Watkins, and Amir Abdullah are the 3 primary guys back there on a consistent basis thus far during training camp. And then Mykel Williams, arguably the biggest news not related to actual practice takeaways. He was locked up with Mike McGlinchey. He went to the ground. He immediately grabbed his knee, and everyone's hearts stopped. We all went, we all gasped, and we all said, "Oh my God, this looks terrible." Bosa ran over, Fred Warner ran over, and it was like a pause. Like no one breathed, no one moved an inch. What's going on? He got back to his feet. Did kind of limp off the field and went to the training staff room, and we didn't see him the rest of practice. So there was some concern of like, is this an ACL? Is this an MCL? Like, is this a tear? Like, what's going on? The worst thoughts come to mind, but thankfully, according to head coach Kyle Shanahan, the examination he got after he was injured only showed a hyperextension. So that means he'll miss a week, maybe a little more, but shouldn't miss any actual regular season games. However, they are going to further examine him soon to just make sure there's nothing serious going on. But it does seem like right now that San Francisco did dodge a bullet with Mykel Williams not tearing anything on the first kind of exam he had today. So good stuff, albeit a very big scare for San Francisco. That said, I do want to mention while Mykel was practicing today, still looked like himself, pass rushing from the interior, had a couple wins against Denver's guards and whatnot on their offensive line, including a would-be sack against guard Ben Powers during team drills. So despite the injury concern for Mykel Williams, there was still some good things we saw from him before the injury transpired. So they want to pass that along to you before we get into the nitty-gritty of the day. The other big thing, your and my favorite competition is no longer a competition, that is for kicker, but Jake Moody. My goodness, Jake Moody was 100% today. 8 for 8. Yeah, 8 for 8 on the day for Jake Moody. It didn't start off too hot. He doinked one in and was like, oh, okay, like this is not good. Jake was like, 3 for 4 the day before, and now he's doinking kicks again. It's like there's so much inconsistency with him. However, he then made the next 6 kicks just back to back during his special teams field goal session. Then during team drills, he capped off, I believe, the Mac Jones move the ball drill session with a 53-yard field goal. So some good things for Jake Moody, building confidence in him, leading into a very important preseason game for him on Saturday. So good stuff there. But I do want to get to your questions now in the YouTube chat. I see here. Robbie439 says, all right, Sterling, spill it. How bad was Brock really? And I'm getting conflicting reports about Christian McCaffrey. You said he looked good. Everyone else said he went nowhere. Let's talk about Christian McCaffrey first, then I'll get to Brock Purdy. I think what people are getting at when they say he went nowhere was as a running back on the ground. Yes, Denver's defense was just smothering San Francisco's offense throughout the entirety of the day. Mainly early, there was some signs of hope later. We'll get into that soon, but early in the sessions, it was just all Denver's first-team defense. There was nowhere to move for the running backs. Christian McCaffrey, Taylor Jr., they were all stopped. They were getting TFLs. It was just nothing. Like there was nowhere to move on the ground. I would agree with that kind of statement of there was nowhere to go for him on the ground. The centers, the guards, there was no space to move. Denver, again, was smothering San Francisco's offense. And I can honestly say I am concerned about San Francisco's offensive line, albeit it being a early preseason joint practice. I think there is some concerns there. Now, keep in mind, Denver has like one of the best defenses in football, and they're in a different place than San Francisco is from a roster construction standpoint, whereas San Francisco tore down things and is trying to restructure some things this year. Denver is building and adding, paying for Hufanga, paying for Greenlaw, adding pieces left and right, whereas San Francisco is starting to kind of take things away and hope they can build more out of it once they get back to the roots of their problems. But yes, Christian McCaffrey was not great on the ground today. I think he had like one sizable gain, but other than that, it was all Denver's defense. So on that part, I completely agree. However, Where Christian McCaffrey flourished throughout the day and where he honestly has been a better player throughout the entire year training camp thus far has been as a wide receiver. Christian McCaffrey, like his game is not a one-note player. He's not Derrick Henry, right? Or Derrick Henry's primarily a bigger back that can catch the football, mind you, but you're going to use Derrick Henry as that 250 carry a year player, knock down some guards and some defensive tackles and stiff arm your edge rushers and your cornerbacks and be a bell cow. Where McCaffrey, although can do some of those things, he's so dynamic where his forte, well, yes, is a running back. He's so dynamic where he can beat you as a wide receiver in the slot, out of the backfield, being a check down option. So I think McCaffrey excelled at that portion of his game where he was the check down guy, the screen guy, the slot receiver, the guy as an offensive weapon compared to simply being a running back. That to me is where Christian McCaffrey has flourished thus far through training camp, and especially today against Denver. He was giving those guys fits early on when the offense wasn't working well on the ground. CMC through the air still seemed to work pretty well. He caught a touchdown later in the day from Brock Purdy. So again, the receiving threat of Christian McCaffrey worked. The running game of Christian McCaffrey did not work. Now, I think that is more about Denver's defense and the offensive line and opening up holes for him, which to me is a concern. But keep in mind, there also was no Trent Williams out there. So not having your big left tackle, who San Francisco often runs behind, did create some issues. But the interior just wasn't moving Denver's defense. So that's where I would lean as to why maybe some would say CMC wasn't showing off much on the ground, because he wasn't. But through the air, different story. So I hope that answers your question, Robbie, about Christian McCaffrey. I'll get to your part about Brock Purdy in a second, but I do want to get to more questions here in the YouTube comments. Let's see. Big Brick says here, Dallas Flowers also seems like a return possible player. So as a return man, he was back there a couple days ago, but not there today. So you're onto something, but I don't think they want him back there now, knowing that he's probably in line to be this team's cornerback number 3 on the outside behind Green and Lenore. Let's keep things going here on the YouTube chat. John Nevels says here in the YouTube chat, call me crazy, call me a homer, even though I am. From Memphis, I seriously think this is going to be a Super Bowl rematch in week 1 of the preseason. John calling it early. Niners Broncos preseason week 1, going to be a Super Bowl rematch at the end of the year. I like where your head's at. I'd have to see a lot more of San Francisco before I get there, but I like where your head's at, John. I think Denver is going to be really, really good. Really good. I don't know if they're going to give KC a run for their money, but Sean Payton coaches a darn good football team out there in Denver, and I think those guys came to play. Those guys really came to play today, and you can tell that whether it was because it was the first joint practice that they kind of caught San Francisco off guard. I think San Francisco came in maybe expecting one thing or just got off to a slow start, whereas Denver walked in and was like, we're going to smash you right in the face, and you're going to deal with it. So, that's something San Francisco has to work on, albeit a lot of practices like this are scripted, whereas like Shanahan would be in his bag probably during actual game time. So again, there's so many nuances that go into the struggles of today and why things worked and why they didn't. But teams also aren't going to give other teams what they're going to do in a joint practice, right? They're working on things to get better and get the offense moving. So, but with that said, Denver looked pretty good today. Let's see here. Big Brick 84 asks, Sterling, any idea what the time frames for Sam Okawanu and Evan Anderson returns are looking like? My understanding is Sam O is going to miss 1 to 2 weeks, so he'll return either at the tail end of next week, leading into joint practices against the Raiders in the preseason game against the Raiders, or he'll be back by the Chargers preseason week 3 matchup. So Evan Anderson, I don't think his injury is serious. I just think they're being kind of cautious with those guys. but I think he should be back by next week. That's my understanding of the issue that's going on with him. But neither one of those things seem too serious. None of San Francisco's injuries seem too serious, minus Kevin Givens, and barring the results of Mykel Williams' further examination. So it does seem like all these injuries are like 1 to 2 week time periods, hopefully. Then, of course, there is Jauan Jennings. But I do want to move on in my notes to the rest of my takeaways from today's practice. But first, I want to ask you guys to kindly use promo code 49ers Access, 49 ERS ACCESS at SeatGeek.com the next time you make a purchase there, whether it's a football game, a baseball game, a concert ticket. Use our promo code 49ers Access and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. Okay. Let's dive into the offense and Brock Purdy and the rest of the things that went wrong and right at training camp today, because this was a slog of a practice for San Francisco. There were so many inconsistencies from top to bottom, from first team all the way down to the third team offense. There were so many issues happening, many of those being a player specific problem, not like an offensive issue entirely, like the system itself, but like a player problem. Also, keep in mind that San Francisco is playing against a fairly healthy Denver's defense, who didn't have Alex Singleton or Dre Greenlaw, whereas San Francisco doesn't have Brandon Aiyuk, Jauan Jennings, Jacob Cowing, Isaac Guerrero, Trent Williams. Like, all those guys would certainly add some punch to their offense, which may have skewed things, albeit shouldn't excuse Brock Purdy's poor performance today out there at Santa Clara at Levi's Stadium. But on one hand, the injuries, albeit are bad, can be a good thing to have guys that maybe you're vying for a starting job, or guys that are usually with the third or second team playing with the ones, getting the necessary reps of, they may need you later in the year. And guys being out can afford that to some guys like Sebastian Valdez, CJ West. Like, both those guys are probably going to make the team right now, or at least Valdez will push for a spot. West will certainly, but both those guys getting first and second team reps today. So stuff like that, where the injuries suck, but there is some silver linings involved in some guys missing time with the current roster construction San Francisco currently has. On the other hand, though, I don't think today is a true assessment of what the first team offense would look like, or even the defense, because Green's out, Mustafa's out, Mykel Williams got hurt, and then Lenore didn't do a lot of team drills. So again, there's so many nuances that go into why today may have been, I guess, a loss, if you want to call it that, for San Francisco, where you'd rather San Francisco walk out and dominate against the Denver Broncos, make you feel good about yourself and the team. But there is some reasoning as to why things may have been more rough than we should have expected things to be. But I think a lot of the issues were up front for San Francisco, especially on offense. The offensive line was beaten a ton today. A ton of would-be sacks on Brock Purdy, a ton of pressure on him, running around, plays that would have ended in sacks in an actual football game. Also, the timing was off from the receivers to the quarterback. Brock was running around far too much. A lot of holding on to the football very long. Like, plays that were like drawn out, and you're like, oh my God, throw the football, please. Whether that was Brock or Mac Jones, mainly Brock Purdy, but there just seemed to be, whether it was Denver's defense doing a darn good job locking up San Francisco's young receivers, or San Francisco's offense is not playing well. Timing was off, and Purdy was holding on to the football far too often. The running game was non-existent really until later in practice. There was no lanes for McCaffrey and Taylor to run. And so, like, a lot of those things aren't good. Like, they're bad. Like, you have to clean those things up as you progress through training camp and preseason, and you hope once game time comes, like, your first team offense runs smoother and better when games come. But I also don't hate that. Like, there's a portion of the fan base that will hear, oh, they struggled, oh, they weren't good, and say, oh, put a fork in them, they stink, I told you so. Whereas I'd push back and say, well, yes, You don't want those struggles to happen. Sometimes struggling can be a blessing in disguise for you, especially if you are San Francisco trying to retool this roster with so many young guys needing big time reps, not just now, but probably later on in the season, come playoff time or fighting for a playoff spot down the road. So I don't hate that. I think it gives San Francisco an opportunity, a chance to face adversity early in preseason and also find a way to answer back in a very scripted way in a joint practice like this. And I think San Francisco, for as bad as they were today offensively, there was some fight. There was some pushback where if you had your entire roster healthy or you had all your guys out there going 100%, I think you would have saw a better result from the first team compared to not having Aiyuk and Jennings and Cowling and Garendo and Trent Williams on the sideline. So again, not a great day, but I do think it was a nice day to get tested and hopefully grow as a team as you progress through training camp and the preseason games. But I do want to get to Brock Purdy because a lot has been made of Brock today, of how poor he was, how bad he was. There's been some overpraising by people of Brock Purdy, and there's been some overhating. I think, when your team that doesn't have their usual players walks into a practice that's pretty much scripted, or at least almost is, you're gonna have some struggles, and it doesn't excuse Brock at all. He was overall pretty mediocre today. There were some really bad things and also some really nice things from Brock where I would, on the spectrum, put it more towards the negative than the positive for sure. He started off really slow. He threw 2 picks and 7-on-7 drills, so no offensive line, no defensive line, just the receivers, running back, linebackers, and secondary. The first one, he threw it behind Pearsall, which was a big problem today, throwing behind and high to wide receivers. Pearsall got a hand on the football, but it tipped it up and got picked off by Denver defender. The other one, similar fashion, got tipped up and picked off as well. So there was some early issues from Brock Purdy on the day, which was circulating all over social media. Oh, it's Jimmy G 2.0, 5 interceptions against the Broncos. And Brock did real things back in as practice progressed, but not a sharp day for Brock overall, which is uncharacteristic of him because he's been pretty good during training camp thus far. But a lot of throws behind receivers, a lot of throws high and behind receivers, holding on to the football for too long, which again, is that Denver's, just good defense? Is that San Francisco's wide receivers? I'm sure it's a mixed match of both of those factors, but the offense was kind of stuck in the mud trying to find its way. Like, it was almost like they were driving through a foggy road and the fog lights and the headlights were dimmed and they were like, I can't see. Like, I'm driving at 20 miles an hour compared to the actual speed limit here. Whereas later in the practice felt like there was some cleansing of the headlights and things started to open up for them. So again, there was some bad things, overthrows, interceptions by Brock, things that just felt wrong. That didn't look like Brock Purdy. Guys not getting open. The offensive line had pressure on Brock all day long. Just not good. Like, overall, not good. But that said, a lot has also been made of his touchdown throws that do not contain the context of those throws, because you can see Brock today had like 4 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Well, that doesn't give you the context you need of the touchdowns, because some of them were great. One of them was phenomenal, whereas 2 of them were less than spectacular, probably wouldn't have been touchdowns in an actual game. The first one being a kind of a little inside slant to Christian McCaffrey for a touchdown, just boop, ran for it. However, that play took way too long to develop. He would have been hit. It would have been a running around, trying to make a play, kind of freestyle Brock Purdy play. But that play took way too long to happen. That's not gonna happen during actual games. The next one was to Demarcus Robinson, where Purdy has to pull the ball down, run to his left, and make the completion for a touchdown, where that's great and all. However, again, like the first one, just taking too long to develop. Plays where, again, it felt like the wide receivers and the offense as a whole was stuck in the mud through a lot of Brock's snaps. Now, again, what's the reason for that? It's a lot of things, but I don't just want you to see, oh, Brock threw a touchdown. That's great. Yeah, it's great and all, but like it doesn't really give you the context you need to actually kind of decipher what transpired there if you weren't at practice today. With all of that negativity, because there's a lot of it from Brock Purdy today, I do think he ended pretty strong. The offense got moving later in practice, was hitting some throws to Jordan Watkins and Pearsall late. Purdy and Pearsall and Watkins were still in lockstep throughout their struggles. They were definitely making it a point to get those guys open. And for most of practice, those were the two guys open for all the quarterbacks involved, Pearsall and Jordan Watkins. So that was a bright spot of today. Purdy and Pearsall continuing their hot streak together. And Purdy threw what may have been, at least on San Francisco's end of offense, the best throw of the day. It was a near 30, 29, 31-yard touchdown pass to Ricky Pearsall on a fade route towards the right-hand side of the end zone. Just right over Jahdae Barron, their first-round draft pick this past year, just right into his hands, and it was like, wow, like that's Brock Purdy. That's the touch. That's the precision. That's what you usually see from San Francisco's quarterback. And I think, for all the struggles they had, sometimes – you just have bad days. Sometimes you get thrown different things you haven't seen before, and you can be really good against your own players. You can be phenomenal without pads on. But when you have pads on, things change. I think we saw Isaiah Neyor being the base example of that. Whereas you're not playing your best, or you don't have your best weapons out there with you. You're playing a new defense you haven't seen before. Guys react different. You don't know their traits very well. And how, like, what are their instincts? Where are they going to be? And so, that's okay. Like, it would be different if, like, they're game planning for a practice. You would see those interceptions go down, the mistakes go down, but you're not game planning for a practice. So, I think knowing that they were much better in the 2-minute move the ball drill compared to 7-on-7s and earlier team drills, that does give me more hope that, okay, like you can put aside the struggles for now, table them, and don't bring them back up. But I do think that this was probably one of Purdy's worst days, especially the beginning, but he did kind of round things back up, albeit still found himself towards the negative of the spectrum for me. We have a comment here in the YouTube chat. Oh, actually, a lot of them, mind you. Let's see. Amar Singh says, I'm not really worried about the offense as long as we have Kyle and Brock. I feel the same way. It's just people are going to overreact to this stuff. And yes, like we'd all prefer Brock have 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, look great, because who wouldn't, right? Like Bo Nix today was tremendous. Bo Nix was the better quarterback of those guys on the field today. That's okay, because San Francisco also doesn't have Lenore, Bernardo Green, Mustafa. And that's concerning, knowing that if those guys go down, that could be a problem for you. But again, there's no implementation of a game plan. So there isn't, like, you can't take too much away from this outside of guys standing out, making plays individually. Well, that is where Brock's stuff comes into play, where it's like, man, so again, people will over sensationalize struggles and not reward the good play, or they'll do the inverse of over sensationalize the good stuff and not discuss some of the small things out there that could kind of hinder or could kind of push back on the narrative of the positivity of certain players. Strawberry Reacts here says the interceptions also need context because they were during 7-on-7s, not team period. Also very true. None of Brock's interceptions came during team drills. None of them. All during 7-on-7s. That's important to note. Not sure how important, but certainly important. Let's continue here. Is it Lael? I hope I get your name right. I'm sorry if I'm not getting it right, so forgive me there. But he says, or she says, I have no idea what you are. They say, I'll use that pronoun. They say, Mac Jones getting a better review today after throwing more interceptions. That's true. That's true. We saw so many reports of Brock Purdy threw interceptions. Brock Purdy threw 2 interceptions. Mac Jones threw 3 interceptions on the day. but no one's talking about it. Um, I think Nick Waggoner may have been the only person I saw mention Mac Jones's 3 interceptions. Um, just baffling how that's being left out of the conversation. Now, keep in mind, Mac threw 2 of them during 7-on-7s, so there's that, but also threw 1 of them during team drills. And so again, like there's give and take to everything. For every player, every drill, there's always give and take. So for as bad as Purdy was, and as bad as the picks were, and as bad as the accuracy and timing was today, Mac also threw 3 interceptions. So I'm not going to tear down one guy and just avoid the negativity of the next guy too. We have to be fair. If you're going to be there and watch practice, you cannot be, you can't have a narrative here. Brock threw 2 picks. He wasn't great. Mac threw 3 of them. Brock ended the day really good on an amazing 30-yard touchdown pass to Pearsall. Mac Jones also had a phenomenal touchdown pass to Tariq Owens today, about 40 yards downfield. It was like, wow, that was incredible. And he also found Jordan Watkins for a touchdown. So again, give and take, good and positive. It's like a teeter-totter of outcomes. It's practice too. It's practice. So a lot will be said about this day. So much was said about Jimmy Garoppolo's 5 picks against Denver, and that team went to a freaking Super Bowl. Sometimes making mistakes isn't a bad thing as long as you learn from them. That's the important part. Are you getting better after your mistakes? I think Christian McCaffrey said today after practice that I love football so much because you're going to make mistakes and learn from them and get better from them. The beauty of the game is that, well, we get to make the mistakes and grow. And that's every sport, mind you. Like baseball, you are not good 70% of the time, if not more than that. So it's sports. It's sports. There isn't much to say about that other than it's sports. Lyle also says here that that's true of Mac's interceptions, but he had the second team offense. True. However, all the receivers rotate. Not Kittle, but like Pearsall, Watkins, Gage, all those guys rotate. You're getting all the same wide receivers every single time, just against the worst defense. He's getting Denver's second team defense. So what does that say about Mac Jones? You're playing a worse defense with the same players Purdy is minus the offensive line and George Kittle. Like they're all mixing in there. So again, nuance, context, all that matters. And like, that doesn't mean Mac Jones was bad. He was precise. Like Mac was doing some good things, as was Purdy later in practice. So let's not just like run in here and hate on certain people or whatever. It just feels like that there's been this narrative from some people in the fan base of wanting to tear down Brock to hype up Mac, which is so dumb to me. Just say what's happening. If you report what's happening, you're doing your job right. Narrative reporting isn't good reporting. You should not be someone that has a narrative, unless you're writing an op-ed, that's different. But if you have a narrative behind your reports, then it is disingenuous. It just feels like that, Purdy, who was not great today again, ended strong. Highlight both of those things. Mac wasn't great, 3 interceptions, but also was precise in his throws. Had an amazing 40-yard pass to Tariq Owens. It was awesome. Let's do that. Like that's great stuff. Like both quarterbacks were good and bad. Move on. That's how things go. That said, Brock's still the starting quarterback. Like Brock's still the guy. Even if Brock threw 20 interceptions today, he'd still be this team's starting quarterback. Like that's just the way things go. So, but thankfully he didn't do that. But let's move on to the rest of my notes. And let's get into Ricky Pearsall. Let's get into a less polarizing player on the team that doesn't play quarterback. Let's get to the wide receiver group because today was an awesome performance from San Francisco's wide receivers, namely Pearsall and Jordan Watkins. It was so great to see young receivers be able to thrive in padded practice, but also take that success and translate it over into a joint practice against what is one of the best defenses in football that have a darn good secondary and a really good defensive line. So we saw Pearsall early. First rep of 1v1s get locked up and strapped up by Patrick Surtain, who is probably the best, if not the second best coverage corner in football nowadays. But Pearsall came back and beat every subsequent defensive back in 1v1 drills, not named Patrick Surtain. So, okay, you got beat by an all-pro. No shame there. But you come back, you win the rest of your reps. That's a thumbs up. That's good to see. However, Pearsall also got Surtain back during 7-on-7s on an out route towards the right sideline. So you lose your 1v1 and you beat him during team drills. Again, progress. Great stuff there. Again, he and Purdy also hooked up for that 30-yard touchdown pass late in team drills against their first-round pick, Johnny Barron. So again, like you're seeing Pearsall take step after step, check off box after box as he grows in year number 2. Then Jordan Watkins, who I think, man, I put on Twitter today that he has been the most impressive mid-round wide receiver that this regime has drafted. That includes Danny Gray, Dante Pettis, Jalen Hurd. From rounds 3 to 5, he's the best one. That doesn't include 7, Jauan Jennings and Debo and Aiyuk, but which I get it. Those guys don't really have much of a track record of success, but they keep trying to hit in round 3, 4, and 5, and they can't. And it certainly feels like at this point in time, albeit, 13 days in the practices, Watkins has looked every bit of the part, and like Pearsall, translated over that success from padded practices and OTAs into today against the Broncos. He didn't miss a beat. He was incredible today. The speed on display multiple times, the route running on display. He was darn near perfect during 1v1s, creating separation, buying himself time, catching the football. He beat Patrick Surtain on a slant route over the middle during red zone periods. He also beat Joshua Pickett. There was a tweet out there that was saying he beat Patrick Surtain deep downfield. That didn't happen. He beat Joshua Pickett, defensive back, deep downfield, which was great to see for a touchdown. So again, great stuff from Jordan Watkins. Caught a deep pass from Carter Bradley today as well on a deep crosser. So again, Jordan Watkins growing as a player quickly, proving himself to be, I don't know how much he plays, but he's pushing for a job, pushing for a role somewhere in the offense. I think by far he was one of the most impressive offensive players on both sides of the field, and far and away, if not the best, the second best offensive player on the field for San Francisco today, over Christian McCaffrey, over George Kittle, tied, if not better than Pearsall. He was that good. And that's, you were not saying those things about Danny Gray and Dante Pettis and Jalen Hurd. You weren't hearing those things about them and seeing them live in person. So to hear that, to see that, it was like, finally. And I think Jordan Watkins probably shouldn't have been as late of a pick as he was. He was really good last year at Ole Miss as a deep threat. He was their offense with Jackson Dart. So I think San Francisco, wanting to push the ball more downfield, have a more vertical threat when Aiyuk gets back, Pearsall, Watkins, Cowling, Jennings, like they have the makeup there for a more explosive passing game, and Watkins fits the bill for being a part of that, whether this year or next year. But right now, he is pushing hard to get a job. And Cowling hasn't played a single practice thus far outside of the first one where he got hurt. Watkins has leaped over where Cowling was last year too. Like Jordan Watkins is just, it's really, really good to see from a young player like him. But let's move to the defense for a second, because we have to talk about All-Pro Fred and D. Winters locking down the middle of the football field. It was a lot better day for San Francisco's defense, in my opinion, their first-team defense than their first-team offense early on in practice. Yes, Bo Nix was great today, and there was a lot of plays where the defensive line would get pressure on Bo Nix and move him out of the pocket, but then they couldn't contain him or he'd make a play downfield. So that said, I thought Fred Warner and D. Winters were flying around today, making plays. And I mean, we already know Fred. he's the best linebacker in football right now, the best coverage linebacker in football, one of the best coverage linebackers in football history. And he was showing it off today during 1v1s, got a big PU, was locking dudes down in coverage today. Winters, though, that's where kind of everyone's focus is on, because you already know Fred's proven where Winters having a great camp. He walked in today with, I think, a chip on his shoulder because, like Fred, flying around to making plays, he was popping dudes pretty loud during practice, making it known like, I'm here. He also was utilized in the blitzing game too, which you haven't really seen much of. There's been more of it lately in practice, but Saleh certainly ramping things back up, giving Bo Nix a different look here or two of a blitz or whatnot. But the blitz was well timed. He forced an incompletion. So you're seeing Winters maybe utilized as that Dre Greenlaw blitzer this year. So that's good to see, because Dre, for as great as he was in coverage and as great as he was covering running backs and tight ends and going one sideline to the other, Dre was also a damn good blitzer. So good to see D Winters utilizing that role too, and at a successful rate at that. Then also in coverage, D Winters running stride for stride downfield with Denver's running back. Not sure who it was, but stride for stride, forces the incompletion. And you hear like he's locking down Christian McCaffrey, and he's moving over and doing those things against Denver too. So I'm not too concerned about the Niners' middle of the defense. Like, you got Nick Bosa, who's great, and all that, but D Winters and Fred is really growing on me. And I think Fred's great in his own right, and by far and away can carry the load, but Winters is, the steps are being like 2 at a time. Like, he's growing really quickly into year 3. I also want to get to the trenches, because there was also a lot of trench work being done, a lot of standouts today too. When you have like 14 different sessions happening throughout practice, there's so many reps for so many guys, hence why you need bodies left and right. But also with San Francisco not having the amount of bodies you'd want on the defensive line, you got a lot of work from CJ West, Alfred Collins, Bryce Huff, Nick Bosa, Robert Bill Jr., even Sebastian Valdez out there was doing work. So let's get into the trenches on defense today. On the offensive side, not going to lie to you, just wasn't really impressed at all. I just thought that without Trent out there, there was just so much pressure on Purdy, which really concerns me. Mac didn't have the same amount of pressure on him, but I just think that I question why they didn't do more. Like, we were already doing that during free agency and during the draft, but I think it's a real concern that, and again, like maybe during a more, game planned offense, it looks better and different, where it wasn't today, obviously, because practice, but I think the concerns of the offensive line, like, that needs to be disproven to me, because it hasn't been great, like, at all during training camp. There's been some standouts here or there, but overall, and today especially, it was like, oh my God, like, they're going to get these dudes killed. Thought it was really bad, like really bad. And that goes from first team all the way down. And again, maybe that changes during, schemed up plays and whatnot. So I'll give them some grace, but they need to show me something more than what I've seen. That said, the defense, though, I thought did some work. Nick Bosa was given the offensive tackles for Denver fits all day long. He was a menace. He was wrecking shop. McGlinchey did beat him during 1v1s, but other than that, he was given McGlinchey and Garrett Bowles just the works today. And he was putting a lot of pressure on Bo Nix too. The difference was Bo Nix had some guys open downfield to throw to and made a lot of great plays. So if you are on the Bo Nix hype train, yeah, it's real. He looks really good. And I think Denver is in a good place to not just push for a wild card, but could give KC a run for their money in the AFC West. But a very good day from Nick Bosa. He's been great throughout training camp, and he's looked good today too. The other side, when Mykel Williams went down, it became the Bryce Huff show for a second. Huff and Bosa paired together on the first team with Williams out throughout the joint practice session. And I think Huff flashed his speed very well. We know that Huff is more of that speed rusher, spin moves, quick cuts to the inside. He's not going to, be this powerful edge rusher and should pair well with Mykel on the outside, but he beat McGlinchey a couple times on the outside playing edge rusher, forced Nix out of the pocket to make a few plays. So the defensive line was getting pressure on the exterior on Denver and even on the interior too. Like you had CJ West today, who in 1v1s outright beat all pro guard Quinton Miners. And it was like, oh, okay, CJ, like you came to play. And West has surprised San Francisco's offensive line with the strength and quickness he has. And I think maybe that was a reason for the surprise of Miners. But anytime you beat an all-pro, whether it's cornerback, receiver, offensive lineman, defensive lineman, like you deserve praise. And I think CJ West, who wasn't perfect today by any means, it wasn't as impressive as, his 4 wins in 1v1s or, 6 would-be sacks or whatnot. But when you're beating an all-pro guard that should know how to handle you and they don't, that's a big deal. And so West, thumbs up, gets a positive report today from me. He also got a ton of first-team reps with guys out. He got a would-be sack against guard Ben Powers. So West is looking like the better of the 2 defensive tackles drafted this year by San Francisco. No surprise there for me. I've been saying that for a long time here on the show, but a very good showing from CJ West, who, like Jordan Watkins and Upton Stout, they've had 3 really good rookie standouts throughout the entirety of training camp and today throughout the joint practice against the Broncos. That said, I don't want to dig Alfred Collins too much of a hole because Alfred Collins was also really good today. It was his best day by far. I think we've been slowly seeing the progression, slowly seeing him kind of get his feet out of the water, back on dry land, find his footing and make some plays. And I think today he won 3 of his 4 1v1 reps. You can tell there was more of a plan in place of how to attack Denver's offensive line. It wasn't just a bull rush or power. There was a snatch move. There was a spin move. And it was like, okay, like there's Alfred Collins finally. He got Calvin Throckmorton, who he got him with his strength and just got the snatch move and moved him out of the way and would have got a would-be sack against the guy. So it's good to see there from Alfred Collins. He also may have had one of the best plays of team drills on the defensive line today, which we haven't gotten to say much from the second rounder this training camp. He forced his way into Bo Nix's passing lane, utilizing his strength, then got the quarterback to go out of the pocket. Now, the play worked in Denver's favor, but just having the ability to generate interior pressure will do so much for San Francisco, whereas last year it was non-existent at all. They couldn't move the pocket. Quarterbacks were running back there for 13 seconds a pop, and it was like, holy hell, someone do something. To see Collins do that against the first team and second team today was a really good sign, and to know that in his maybe most pressure-filled performance with the first team, with so many guys injured, having your best day is a really great thing. So 2 thumbs up for Alfred Collins from me today. The other guy who I don't often praise because I don't think he's a great player, but flowers are flowers. And unlike The Bachelor, I have infinity to hand out. So Robert Beal Jr. gets some praise from me today. He's not a guy that has power. He's a speed guy. And that really isn't good either. But today there was more power involved. He beat McGlinchey once, and then he knocked back, I don't know who it was, but one of their offensive tackles into the quarterback for a win on the play. So there was some good things from Robert Beal Jr. of all people. He also got some pressure on Denver's second team defense or offense, and forced the quarterback out of the pocket to make some plays. So again, San Francisco's defensive line was not the problem today. I was really impressed by Salah's unit on the defensive line. And that goes from Bosa to Huff to West to Collins to Beal Jr., even all the way down to a UDFA and Sebastian Valdez, who I ignorantly did not put on my 53-man roster prediction. I didn't even talk about him. It was an oversight by me. The last week and a half, or last week or so, he's really stepped up and made some plays in the absence of some guys. So I do want to give Sebastian Valdez, the UDFA, his flowers as well. I think he's becoming a name to watch to either make the roster or push for a practice squad role. There's not many guys in that room that have their job solidified outside of West and Collins. So to see him win 3 of his 4 reps today with power, speed, and leverage, and get under guys' pads and flash some more pass rushing skill sets than say Jordan Elliott or Evan Anderson have, who are more run stuffing defensive tackles. That's big news. I think that's really good stuff from the interior defensive line of San Francisco, where there's so many things up for grabs. To see younger guys kind of grab that brass ring and go with it, that's really good stuff from a really young defense trying to make some hay in the NFL. But let's move to the cornerback room for a second, because it's really in flux. Bernardo Green's out still with the hamstring injury. Lenore is back during 1v1s, but then not in during team drills as much. So there does seem to be this hesitancy to play him with the hip injury he has, leaving guys like Darrell Luter Jr., who got hurt today, but got cleared for a concussion, and Dallas Flowers and Trey Brown and other guys, Jacob Robinson, to play outside with the first and second team defense, whereas some of those guys should be up there and some of those guys shouldn't be up there. And I think it showed today. A lot of issues in the secondary, especially at cornerback today. Flowers, unsurprisingly, was the better of the trio of the grouping of Luter and Robinson and Brown and those outside cornerbacks. He was the better of that group. But Luter really struggled today to a point where the Denver Broncos just kept targeting him over and over and over again. Now, I don't know when he got concussed or had symptoms, so maybe that was an attribution as to why he struggled. However, it was like in previous seasons where you'd see other teams target Brian Allen, or you'd see teams target Ambry Thomas because they knew he was a smaller cornerback and wasn't that great. It felt like that today. Let's bully Darrell Luter Jr. throughout practice, and Denver did for a lot of it before he got hurt. That said, the big struggle came from penalties on the defense, where you had so many guys that would have had would-be sacks or pressures during a game or during a preseason game, and would have pushed drives back or ended drives that were just negated by dumb penalties today. Kalia Davis had a would-be sack or a pressure that was negated by a defensive holding call by the secondary. Nick Bosa and Bryce Huff both had sacks that were erased by a Dallas Flowers DPI. Jonathan Garvin, the exact same thing, who he had a sack. Defense called for a penalty. I get it. You're playing against other receivers, new guys, defense, new scheme. They're throwing things at you haven't seen before. All that's good. But it was like San Francisco's secondary was behind a step, needing to catch up on the outside, leading to holding calls and others along that line. So, again, the defensive line was really getting home and forcing the Broncos quarterbacks to make plays and get pressure. But the secondary was a big problem today. Now, do things get cleared up once Lenore and Mustafa and Green come back? I would like to think so. But just in a practice like this, you can't help but notice there's 17 flags out there. Why? What's going on? Now, to also be fair and to give more clarity here, you can't see everything on the football field. They have things lined up, so you're getting glimpses of things and not the full picture at times. So again, take that into account when you hear not just me, but everybody out there. Nobody saw every single rep today. It's impossible. So take that into account too. That said, let's move on to my final notes of practice. As Rob D says here, hope you're having a great day, Rob D. He says, practice? Talking about practice? Doing his best Allen Iverson impression, which the Sixers are bringing back those old black jerseys from 2000. I am hyped for those, albeit not a big Sixers fan, but anytime you hit my nostalgic 90s, early 2000s bug in my head, it makes me happy. So that's good to see. Nonetheless, let's get to Upton Stout, who has been, if not the best rookie on this team, if not the best secondary player on the team, in conversations with Jason Pinnock and Dallas Flowers, with Green and Lenore not being on the football field. Upton Stout continues, like Jordan Watkins and like CJ West, to take his success and translate it over in to joint practices. I'm sure by now you've seen the 1v1 rep against Troy Franklin. There's been some debate as to whether it was a holding call or a DPI. I don't mind guys getting it physical. Do it now compared to later. Learn now, get better after making mistakes. And look, the same thing goes for the defensive penalties too. Like, make the mistakes now. That's okay. As long as you can correct them, then I'm okay with that. But if it continues to be a problem, then we'll have a different conversation. But Stout today was just awesome. It's very hard to find other words to describe him than just he's a dog. Like, he's a DAWG, dog. He's awesome to watch in person. He's feisty, sticky in coverage, likes to use his hands, wants to initiate contact with wide receivers. He's unafraid to take on left tackles in his blocks and whatnot as a defender in the running game, which you saw again on social media, the 1v1 against Troy Franklin, bodies him up, kind of knocks him off his bearings a little bit. He falls down and then gets the interception in 1v1s. But then later in practice during team drills, he had a nice early run stop against J.K. Dobbins where he just evades the blocker, gets around him, and then bang, hits Dobbins near the line of scrimmage to end the play. So like Watkins and West, albeit a quieter day for Stout, then those two guys, a good day from three rookies for San Francisco. So some really, really good stuff out there. Just awesome things. I know today's practice offensively wasn't great. There was a lot of things you got to clear up and clean up, but just days like this are never bad, because these days allow you, like we always want to say, iron sharpens iron unless you're against other teams in a practice session. That stuff still stands. Now, yes, you want your guys to play better, but iron still sharpens iron when it's Broncos against Niners in a joint practice. The same thing goes. So I am eager to watch how this team plays in the preseason. It doesn't sound like we're going to see any starters in preseason week 1, which we shouldn't. So it would be nice to watch guys like Mykel Williams out there, but he's not going to play on Saturday, so that sucks. But hopefully we get to see guys like Watkins and West and Alfred Collins and other young guys like Sebastian Valdez and D. Winters and Nick Martin show off and play out for the first time in front of their home crowd. And hopefully we can give them a warm welcome as a new draft class, because this fan base needs a better season. It was so tough to go from losing a Super Bowl to having a terrible year, where now the expectations, albeit aren't the same as they once were, they certainly are higher than last year to bounce back. So I love days like this because you can always get better. Like, sometimes you have a hard day in class, you have a hard day at work, but those days make you better. My wife had a grueling year last year as a teacher where there were kids that just needed help, and she tried her hardest and her darndest to get it to them. And these things didn't work out in their favor at times, and they put her through hell with their actions and whatnot. It was a tough year, but you got to push through it to get better. And she had a new school year start today. And I asked her, how was your day? Like, please tell me it's better than last year. And she was like, yeah, it was way better than last year on day one. So again, in every facet of life, struggle is not always bad. Do not take Brock Purdy's 2 picks or Mac Jones's 3 picks and the struggles of the offensive line as an issue. If they become an issue and continue to be an issue later, well, then we'll certainly talk about that. And I have my concerns about things, mainly the offensive line, but I'm not concerned about Brock Purdy's picks or things like that. There's so many positive things from today, like Jordan Watkins, like Pearsall, like West, like Collins, like Upton Stout, Sebastian Valdez, all those guys, Warner, Winters, all those guys having really good days that people are too hyper-focused on a bad day from Brock Purdy and the quarterbacks, because let's be honest here, they can go against Las Vegas next week and they can light up that defense. And we all say, well, they're back. And it just depends. So if you don't take preseason games seriously, why do you take a joint practice like this as a problem too? This is Brock Purdy's preseason game. That's okay. A lot of guys suck during preseason. But that's all I have for you today. It was a longer show. Thanks for sitting around with me. I appreciate you being here. Drop your takeaways. Drop your comments down below from the joint practice. Are you worried about Brock Purdy's interceptions? Are you maybe a little worried about Mac Jones and the offensive line and whatnot? Are you excited, ecstatic about Watkins and Pearsall and the young guys on the roster playing well early on in their first or second training camp and preseason sessions? Tell me down below in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Leave us that 5-star audio podcast review. Don't forget to follow us on social media at 49ers_access is the X or Twitter. 49ers.access is the Instagram. I want to thank every single one of you here in the YouTube comments. Kenny 49ers, Rob D, Papa J, Kawachipto, Benali P, Lori Matthews. So many of you guys in here, Big Brick 84, Filthy Casual, Set Builder, Strawberry Reacts. I'm going to go all the way to the top and get to every single one of you guys in here, because Lyell, his first comments I've ever seen here. Thank you for being here today. You Trippin', Sacred Intuition. I think RMR Singh, he in here too. Robbie 43 or Robbie 439 or 439 is also in here. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you can, like, share, subscribe. Leave us that 5-star audio podcast review. And as always, my name is Sterling Bennett. And until next time, use this promo code 49ErsAccess to save yourself $20 off your first purchase. And until next time, stay faithful.